It was arguably the most horrific, and I've seen a lot of death as a medic and as a cop, but that one still haunts me to this day because I can see him and he was looking at me and there was nothing I could do.
I do not know you, but I am your brother.
You do not know me, but I am your protector.
I will run into a burning building to save your life.
Though I do not know your name, I will take a bullet for you.
Though we've never met,
I believe in duty and sacrifice
of self.
Your family is my family.
Is my family. Your life is my duty.
What's going on, guys? Time for another episode of Behind the Uniforms. This is Micah. We are doing the special episode of Behind the Uniforms because he has flown all the way out here from, where are you from?
Colorado.
That's a little bit of a hike.
It was a hike.
Flew out for the task force. For those of you who have never seen the show before, the way that it typically works is this. We invite first responders, veterans out to the whiskey wall. We share a cocktail. They share a couple stories to tell you about a good day and about a bad day. We don't have a whiskey wall today. I've got some bottled water if you want after. But why don't you tell everybody who you are?
Name's Micah Richardson, retired law enforcement emergency services. Married to my beautiful wife Jana of 24 years coming up here in short order. I got a 16-year-old daughter, just turned 16, and a 20-year-old son, who are my world.
It's awesome. What brought you out here?
Well, you did, to get together, really vision casting for problematic solving of the active killer situation we have going on right now. The episodes that are happening are starting to feel more epidemic to me, and I've got a passion for servanthood and taking care of children. And the second that I saw the first video and we made contact, I knew that this was kind of meant to be, and it was a situation I want to be a part of.
So where do you want to start? Good day, bad day?
Good day, bad day. Law enforcement related?
Yes.
Good day. I think you should pay respects to your elders and the people that mentored you. So I was a paramedic coming out of Michigan. My wife and I visited Columbia, South Carolina, and I was going to go on a 1-week whirlwind tour of visiting a lot of departments down there. We were looking at moving to South Carolina, and I walked into the Richland County Sheriff's Department. And sitting behind a little glass wall, little speaker hole that you talk through, was a gentleman wearing a tie. He said, "May I help you?" I explained I was out of state looking at the department. He says, "Hey, come on back. Let me give you a tour of the agency." And he shook my hand. He said, "My name's Fred." And he walked me around the department for the better part of about 45 minutes. And he said, "Would you like to go get a bite for lunch?" And I said, "I'd love to." And he says, "Well, come on back. I'll get my keys." And we walked down this long hallway, and at the end of the hallway it said, "Chief Deputy Fred Riddle." It was a 500-man agency, and I will never forget the day that Fred Riddle took the time to spend an hour with me to walk around the department and then take me to lunch, not knowing me. And he ultimately mentored me for a few years in the department once I moved down there and hired in. And he was just essentially one of my heroes in life. But a true leader, what kind of man shakes your hand and walks a stranger around a department and starts his career? So that to me was the day that started it all in my law enforcement career.
That's awesome. Yeah. What a bad day?
Well, I have two. One actually was a case. A young lady was killed. It was an unsolved murder. I took special interest in it. It is still unsolved to this day, even though I know who it was. And so that's something that has carried with me for most of the last 22 years, 23 years. And I think about the family often. There just wasn't enough evidence to bring in a probable cause for an arrest to court. So that was tough, simply just knowing them and what they have gone through. It was one of the only cases that I was not able to solve. I think the heartbreak day for me in law enforcement, my partner and I, Charlie, we were down South Columbia, and when they dispatch medical over our airwaves, typically they don't come onto our channel unless we're scanning it, and they dispatched an unknown medical. And he and I, it was late at night, and we were sitting next to each other, kind of parked. We were doing some paperwork, and I looked over at him, and he said, "Boy, something felt weird about that. We should probably head that way." And while we were en route, they called us on the air and said, now there's an unknown 911 hang up. We're going to need you to respond. We said, we're already en route. And pulled into this driveway, and it was a kind of a plantation style house, big, 8,000 square feet, I'd guess, and a long driveway, weeping willows, very kind of almost an ominous feel driving down the driveway. Lights were off in the house, and we got up and did kind of a real quick perimeter search, but something kept tugging at me that we need to get in, and eventually made entry, came down a hallway, and there was an elderly gentleman sitting on the floor, had his hands over his head, and he was crying. I'd put him probably in his late 70s. They called out to him 2 or 3 times, Sheriff's Department, sir, can I talk to you? Can I talk to you? Is everything okay? I wasn't getting a response. He just kept kind of almost whimpering, crying. And one light coming out of a room right where he was sitting, and I got down to the room and I turned the corner, and there was a 7-year-old boy who had hung himself, and he was staring at me. Still tears me up to this day. His eyes were bulging, and what I learned is they had soap on a rope, something I used to play with as a kid, and they had it around the shower head, and he had somehow managed to get his arm in there, and he got tangled up in it, and by the time the grandfather found him, it was too late. And the hard part in the whole situation wasn't just the loss of this child, but was meeting the mother and the father who had been on their first date in a great many years. And so they trusted the father to take care of it. And it was arguably the most horrific. And I've seen a lot of death as a medic and as a cop, but that one still haunts me to this day because I can see him and he was looking at me and there was nothing I could do. And trying to hold the mom back. It's just one of those things you never forget.
All right, brother. What this is going to be sort of one of those awkward transitions now because I don't know how to recover from that.
Sorry.
No. What do you? Thank you for sharing that, man. What are you doing now?
Well, the brief synopsis of my career, just to transition, I guess keep it simple, is I was blessed to work with a lot of people down in South Carolina. I came out to Colorado, fell in love with the mountains. My wife and I moved. She's a psychologist, has her own business, developed a counseling center. We have a business as well together. And just a calling to go into churches and schools and train them for active killer scenarios. And we do an inordinate amount of assessments for churches and schools. And what we found through a lot of these assessments is there was a tremendous disconnect between law enforcement agencies and churches and schools, and a lot of separation through the entities and how things are run and policies and procedures. And we felt there's a great opportunity here to bridge a gap and maybe help churches understand what it's like to be a law enforcement officer walking through the door, regardless of the situation that they may face, and vice versa. So we started going in and instructing law enforcement personnel, sheriff's departments, police departments, and just talking with people through a lot of crisis de-escalation and what you might face when you're walking into a church and how things operate very, very different. I had the opportunity, once I retired from law enforcement, for spending about 8 years in a very, very large church, about 15,000 people a week. We learned a lot of the goings-on within the church family and how it works, and there's a tremendous amount of overlap, believe it or not, in church versus state separation that actually happens in the schools and in the churches as far as how people are related to, and communication and family dynamics. People that are broken in their homes are just as broken when they drop their kids off of school and just as broken when they come into the church. And law enforcement typically goes off of revised statutes that they have to enforce law off of, and sadly not always understanding the human component. And it's not their fault, it's just the way we were trained, and we're seeing the world change. So as time progressed and as communication and relationships were formed and alliances were formed, we just kept seeing this picture get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And now that we've been able to help an array of churches, an array of schools, we've also been able to walk journeys with law enforcement professionals that are sitting down and saying, I'm just as human. I go to church on Sunday, I drop my kids off at school, I worry about them. I know that I may have to respond to that school, and I may have to step past my own child to go save somebody. And that's something that the average citizen that just goes on about their day, I don't think they understand that. But most people would end up in church if the dynamic or loss of life happened, because that's where people go, obviously, to lay folks to rest and have services. So while there's a dichotomy there, we also felt that there was an opportunity to serve and to help. And when I started watching what you were doing and what you were up to, we immediately became interested, because we knew that there may be an opportunity, not so much just for our business, that's actually very secondary, but just to reach out on a national scale and help our political leaders understand there's a bipartisan aspect, that there's nothing more important than the safety and the well-being of a child, period. I don't care if they're in church or in school, and I don't care what socioeconomic background you come from, cultural background, it matters not. Your children are your most precious gift. And we just felt this draw and this calling to take this thing to the next level. And again, seeing you and others that are already kind of breaching some of these pieces, we felt this is an opportunity to both listen and learn and speak into this with the experiences we have. So that's where we're at with our business, and we actually don't know where it's going to go. We're very excited about it. I mean, it's just every month it feels like something new and exciting, and you meet great people, and we just feel very blessed. It's been a good career.
Shameless plug time.
Sure.
Website.
IsaiahSystems.com.
Awesome.
And if you don't know how to spell Isaiah, shame on you.
Google it. Brother, thank you so much for coming out. Thanks for sharing.
Pleasure's
Thanks for doing
mine.
this.
Thanks for having me.
Guys, it's going to take you 2 seconds to hit the damn share button on this video. We'd be greatly appreciative if you would do that. Thank you all so much for your time and attention. God bless America.